Before you, there was gold. Before the railroads, there was dust. But in the wild heart of Wyoming, there are secrets that refuse to stay buried. This is the story of a man who won a life in a single hand of cards, and the horse that was the price of his soul. Prepare yourself for a tale where loyalty is a curse, and the past is guarded by a creature of silver and shadow. You are about to meet the Ghost Stallion. The spring of 1910 felt like a lie. The air in Cheyenne, Wyoming was still sharp with the threat of one last blizzard, yet the promise of new grass was already pulling the cattle hands back into the saddle. This was the West in transition, a place still unforgiving enough to chew a man up and spit him out, but civilized enough that men like Jack Riley could almost believe they could buy a piece of the permanent world. Riley was 28 years old, his face etched with 6 years of sun-scald and grit, his body accustomed to sleeping on cold earth. He was a drifter by necessity, but a homesteader by desire. Every copper he'd earned from guiding cattle from Texas to Montana was sewn into the lining of his old leather vest, nearly $800, enough to start small, to finally anchor himself. He had only stopped in Cheyenne to collect his final wages, the heavy gold coins now solid and real in his pocket. His plan was simple: 2 drinks and the eastbound train to Denver. But the plan ended the moment he pushed through the swinging doors of the Lucky Silver Saloon. The name was a cruel joke. Luck was usually abandoned on the threshold of this particular establishment. The room was thick with the smell of stale beer, cheap tobacco smoke, and desperation. In the back corner, under a flickering oil lamp, the serious money was playing. 5 men were seated, 4 were easily dismissed. The usual suspects: 2 weary cowboys, a sheep rancher, and a saloon owner hoping to recoup his losses. They wore the West: worn boots, dusty Stetsons, and hands calloused into instruments of labor. The 5th man was an anomaly, an invasion from the East: Horatio Weatherby. He was draped in a tailored charcoal suit and a fine silk cravat. A gold watch chain looped across a vest that hadn't seen a speck of trail dust. His mustache was waxed to sharp, predatory points. Weatherby wasn't a worker. He was an accumulator, a man who made his fortune on the backs of others, dealing in paper, steel, and railroad bonds. He reeked of effortless wealth and detached boredom. "Room for one more?" Riley asked, his voice rougher than he intended. Weatherby looked up. His eyes, dark and flat like polished obsidian, met Riley's. He smiled, but the expression was a muscular flexing, devoid of humor. "Always room for fresh money. Stakes are $50 to sit down. No limit after that." $50 was a staggering amount, more than a month's wages for a working hand. Riley's practical instincts screamed at him to leave. But 6 years of tired bones and the soul-crushing realization that every mile he rode brought him no closer to permanence suddenly won the argument. Just this once. Just one shot. He sat down, peeling off $50. For 2 agonizing hours, Riley played disciplined poker. He watched the ebb and flow, winning a small pot here, losing a bigger one there, staying precisely even. The other locals eventually busted out, replaced by fresh hopefuls who soon faded. By the time the saloon clock struck midnight, the only sound was the clinking of chips and the rustle of cards. Only Jack Riley and Horatio Weatherby remained at the table. Weatherby shuffled the cards, the movement of his soft hands hypnotic and precise. "Interesting evening, Riley. Most men know when to quit. You have grit. I'll grant you that." "I don't quit easy," Riley replied, his jaw tight. "I can see that." Weatherby dealt the cards, his gaze steady. "Tell me, do you ever think about truly settling down? Buying land? Or are you content to chase the horizon until you're too old to sit a horse?" "I think about it every minute I'm awake," Riley admitted. "Then I have a proposition that might interest a man of your ambition." Weatherby set the deck down and produced a folded document from his inside pocket, smoothing the crease with a disdainful finger. I acquired a cattle ranch about 60 miles northwest of here. 3,000 acres, good water rights, solid main house, and outbuildings. It's been sitting largely empty, managed by a part-time hand. I am a railroad man. It's a distraction I no longer tolerate. Why not sell it proper? Riley pressed. Weatherby sighed, a theatrical gesture of impatience. Because there is a complication, a rather peculiar one. He unfolded the deed. There is a horse on that property, a gray stallion. He's been there longer than I've owned the place. Nobody knows where he came from. He is completely wild. Cannot be caught, cannot be broken, and he will not leave. Every owner who has tried to interfere with him, to drive him off, to sell him, or God forbid to shoot him, has met with misfortune. Riley leaned back, skeptical. Misfortune? Accidents, bad luck, the kind that makes simple men superstitious. Weatherby waved his hand dismissively. I don't believe in curses, but I also don't need the headache. So, the deed has a clause written right there, in cramped legal hand. The phantom must stay. He is never to be sold, harmed, or driven off. He roams the property as he pleases. Disobey, and the deed is instantly void. Riley studied the man's face, searching for the lie. And you're willing to stake 3,000 acres of prime Wyoming ranch land on one hand of poker because I am tired of it, Weatherby hissed, a flash of genuine exasperation escaping his polished facade. The railroad is expanding, this ranch is a nuisance. And honestly, his cold smile reappeared, I find it intensely amusing to let fate decide these matters. One hand, I put up the ranch and everything on it. You put up everything you have, all your savings, everything. 6 years of bone-deep fatigue and the dream of owning his own ground suddenly solidified into an unstoppable weight. Riley pushed his entire stake, gold coins, paper bills, his few possessions, into the center of the table. Deal the cards, Riley said, his voice steady. Weatherby dealt 5 cards to each of them. Riley picked up his hand. 3 jacks, an 8, and a 4. A solid hand. He discarded the 8 and the 4. Weatherby, with a calculated shrug, gave him 2 new cards. Riley flipped them over. 2 queens, a full house, jacks over queens. He kept his face neutral, the victory already a tremor beneath his skin. Weatherby discarded 3, drew 3. The silence in the saloon was total. Well, Riley, Weatherby finally said, his voice flat. Moment of truth. What do you have? Riley laid down his cards deliberately. Full house, jacks over queens. Weatherby stared at the winning hand for a long, quiet moment. Then, with a slow, almost resentful motion, he laid down his own. 2 pair, aces, and 10s. Congratulations, he said, the word tasting like ash. He slid the deed across the whiskey-stained table. The ranch is yours. My foreman, old Ezra, is caretaking the place. He'll show you around. Weatherby stood, adjusting his tailored coat. One last piece of advice. Free of charge, do not underestimate that horse. That's not merely a condition of the sale, it is a profound truth. They all failed. He walked out into the cold Cheyenne night, leaving Jack Riley staring at the deed to a life he'd never believed he'd have. 3 days later, Riley rode out on a bay gelding he'd bought with the last of his money. The journey was long, taking him through rolling prairies that climbed into rougher country, rocky outcrops, stands of rugged pine, and creeks rushing with snowmelt. He found the ranch nestled at the base of a long valley, protected by 3 ridges. The main house was a sturdy, smoke-stained log structure. 2 barns stood sentinel nearby, and he could see his new assets, maybe 40 head of cattle, grazing calmly in the distance. Old Ezra, a man who looked every day of his 60-something years, emerged from the house. They shook hands, Ezra's grip surprisingly strong. You must be Riley. Weatherby sent word by telegraph. Place looks sound, Riley observed, surveying the property. It is. Cattle are healthy, water's good, house needs work, but the bones are solid. Ezra paused, his eyes narrowing slightly. Did Weatherby tell you about the horse? The gray stallion. Can't be caught or driven off, Riley recited. That's putting it mildly, son. Ezra gestured toward the northern pasture. You need to see him. They walked past the buildings and through a pasture gate. In the distance, on a low rise, stood the cause of all the trouble. Even from a quarter-mile away, the horse was magnificent. Dappled gray, almost silver in the late afternoon sun, easily 17 hands high. He was muscled, powerful, with a long, whipping mane caught by the wind. The Phantom. He's been here longer than I have, and I've been in this valley 40 years, Ezra murmured. When I was a boy, the old-timers spoke of him like he was already a legend. He's ancient, but he moves like a 2-year-old. Watch. As if sensing their scrutiny, the stallion began moving closer, not running, but with a powerful ground-eating trot. He stopped maybe 50 yards away, studying them with dark, intelligent eyes. He's curious, Ezra said. He'll come close enough to size you up, but take one step toward him, and he's a ghost. Men have tried to rope him from horseback. He outruns them every time. Traps with grain? He's too smart. One owner even hired a professional horse catcher from Texas. That man left empty-handed and furious after 3 months. Riley asked the inevitable question, what happens if you try to shoot him? Ezra's expression darkened. The owner before Weatherby tried that. Rode out with a rifle, tracked the Phantom to the North Canyon, took aim. His own horse spooked, threw him hard. He broke his neck, died on the spot. 3 men witnessed it. Call it an accident if you want, but every single one of the 4 owners before you who tried to interfere with that horse suffered. Financial ruin, illness, freak accidents. The one who tried to poison him lost his entire herd to disease that same week. Riley watched the stallion, who hadn't moved. The horse radiated a presence, a kind of wild, guarded nobility that made Riley's chest tighten. I'll leave him be, Riley decided. He can have his space. I've got 3,000 acres. That's the smart play, Ezra agreed. The only problem is he doesn't just stay in his space. He wanders into the cattle, into the barns. I found him standing in the empty corral at midnight, like he's waiting for something that never shows. And he watches, always watching. The stallion suddenly tossed his head, wheeled around, and galloped away, a silver flash over the ridge. Beautiful, though, Ezra said quietly. The most beautiful horse I've ever seen. Breaks my heart he can't be touched. Lying in his bed that night, Riley listened to the wind outside his new log house. Somewhere in the darkness, a horse screamed, high, wild, and free. The ghost stallion staking his claim. Jack Riley had won a ranch, but he fell asleep, wondering if he had also won a haunting, and what secrets a horse could guard that had kept it alive and alert for 2 decades. For weeks and then months, Jack Riley threw himself into the relentless labor of ranching. This was the life he had earned, or perhaps the life he had been given by a spiteful man and a lucky hand. He repaired every stretch of fence, mended the tack until it was pliable, worked the small herd, and quickly memorized the contours of every acre of his new land. Old Ezra, the foreman, stayed on for a crucial month, teaching Riley where the best summer grass grew, which high creek ran dry first, and how to read the treacherous mountain weather. And every single day, Riley saw the Phantom. The horse was everywhere and nowhere. Sometimes Riley caught only fleeting glimpses of a silver flash on the distant rocky ridges. Other times, he would step out to the main barn at the first light of dawn and find the stallion standing motionless in the corral, a statue carved from morning mist and silver light. The moment Riley moved toward him, even a slight shift in weight, the horse would execute a seemingly impossible vault over the stout wooden fence and vanish instantly. "Told you so," old Ezra would simply say. "He goes where he pleases, and he makes his own rules." One evening, Riley was unnerved to find a series of large, distinct hoof prints circling the main house. The stallion had patrolled the entire perimeter, maybe multiple times. What is he looking for? Riley wondered aloud to Ezra. Nobody knows. Ezra sighed, rubbing his bristly chin. Every owner reports the same thing. The horse circles the house, the barns, certain specific places on the property, like he's running a patrol or searching for a lost object. It's been happening for 23 years. Riley began paying closer attention to the stallion's peculiar patterns. The Phantom favored specific high-ground vantage points, the North Ridge, the canyon mouth, and, most curiously, a specific section of grazing land about a mile from the house. There was nothing special about the spot, just sparse grass and a few scattered igneous rocks. Yet, the stallion returned there regularly, sometimes standing perfectly motionless for hours on end, gazing down at the unremarkable ground. One afternoon, compelled by curiosity, Riley rode his bay gelding out to that isolated location. He tied his horse loosely to a small, wind-battered pine and walked the area on foot, searching for anything, a clue, a sign, a geological anomaly. The Phantom appeared, as always, on the ridge above him, watching. "What is it?" Riley called up to the magnificent gray shape. "What is here?" The horse did not answer. Of course, merely watched with those impossibly dark and intelligent eyes, radiating an ancient patience. Riley kicked at the rough grass and examined the scattered stones, finding nothing but hard earth. But as he turned to leave, something caught his eye. A small, shallow depression in the ground, mostly hidden by thicker vegetation. It was not natural, it was too regular, too intentional. Riley knelt and brushed away the grass and loose soil. Underneath was a flat, ordinary river stone, clearly placed there by human hands. Scratched crudely into its surface, barely visible beneath a layer of moss and grime, were letters and a date. Text T. Goose, 1887, Jaya marker. A grave marker. Riley's heart hammered against his ribs. But for whom? He looked up at the ridge. The Phantom had moved, was now only about 30 yards away, the closest the stallion had ever willingly come while Riley was on foot. The horse's head was slightly lowered, his ears pricked forward, waiting. T.O. Riley said aloud, testing the letters. "Who is T.O.? You knew him, didn't you?" He continued, the realization clicking into place with cold certainty. "You knew whoever this was. That's why you keep coming back here. You're not haunting this ranch, are you? You're waiting for him." The stallion took another cautious step closer. Every instinct told Riley to remain absolutely still, to hold this suspended moment of intimacy. "How long have you been waiting, boy?" The Phantom stared at him for what felt like an eternity, his dark eyes meeting Riley's, judging. Then, as if the proximity was too much, the horse wheeled with a powerful snort and galloped away, disappearing over the horizon. Riley sat there for another hour, staring at the small, humble stone marker. T.O., 1887, 23 years ago. That night, Riley asked old Ezra if there were any old-timers in the valley who might remember events from that far back. "There's one," Ezra said, packing his pipe. "Old Dutch Keller. He must be pushing 80 now. Homesteaded about 10 miles south back in the 70s. If anyone knows the history of that ranch, it's him, but you'll have to ride far and ask polite. Dutch don't often welcome company." Riley rode to Dutch Keller's homestead the very next afternoon. The old man's cabin looked like it had been constructed during the gold rush and was barely holding the weight of its own history. But Dutch himself was sharp-eyed and surprisingly spry. Horatio Weatherby finally dumped that place, did he? Dutch chuckled when Riley explained who he was. "About time. That ranch has been a hot potato for 20 years. No one could stand the company it kept." Old Ezra said you might remember back to the 80s, Riley began. There's a stone marker on the property with the initials TO and the date 1887. Any idea who that might have been? Dutch Keller's expression softened, growing suddenly somber. You found that, did you? Figured the grass would have covered it entirely by now. He gestured toward a pair of rough-hewn chairs on his porch. Sit down, son. I'll tell you about Timothy Oakes. Riley sat, and Dutch took his time packing and lighting his pipe before beginning the tale. Timothy Oakes, Dutch began, releasing a slow plume of smoke, homesteaded that valley in 1885. Young fellow, maybe 22 years old, came west from Missouri after his folks passed. He had nothing but a wagon, some tools, and a yearling colt he'd raised from a foal, a little gray colt. Prettiest thing you ever saw. Riley's pulse quickened. The Phantom? I reckon Timothy called him Smokey at first, on account of his color, but the name changed to something more fitting as he grew. Those two were inseparable. Timothy built that ranch from nothing, cleared the land, built the house and the barns, started his herd, and that colt grew into the finest horse in 3 counties, strong as an ox, smart as a whip, and loyal as a dog. Timothy trained him gentle. He never broke his spirit. They were partners, not master and mount. What happened to Timothy? Riley asked softly. Dutch's face grew heavy with the memory. The winter of 1887 was a brutal, killing one. Snow came early and stayed late. Timothy had about 20 head of good cattle. Then one of his young heifers wandered off during a bad storm, got stuck in a ravine. Timothy went out looking for her on his horse. Found her, too, but there was a rock slide. Timothy got caught in it. Dutch paused, his hands trembling slightly as he relit his pipe. He died, but not right away. The Phantom brought him home, carried him miles through snow that was waist deep on a man. By the time they reached the ranch house, Timothy knew he wasn't going to make it. Internal injuries, broken ribs. We didn't have doctors out here then. A neighbor woman did what she could, but... He shook his head. What did he do? Riley whispered. He spent his last hours with that horse, Dutch said. He had the neighbor bring the stallion right into the house to stand beside his bed. Timothy told that horse goodbye, thanked him for trying so hard. He died with his hand resting on the horse's neck. The neighbor buried Timothy exactly where he had wanted, out in that meadow he loved, under the vast sky, and placed the marker. And the Phantom? Riley asked, though he already knew the answer. He stood over that grave for 3 days. Dutch finished, his voice raw. Wouldn't eat, wouldn't leave. Finally wandered off, and everyone figured he'd go completely wild or die of grief. But he didn't. He came back, and he's been there ever since. 23 years through blizzards and drought, through every owner and every attempt to claim him. He's guarding Timothy's grave, waiting for his partner to come back. Dutch met Riley's eyes. That's not just a horse, son. That's what loyalty looks like when it outlives death itself. The owners who tried to interfere with him, the accidents and the bad luck, I think there are some bonds that don't break, and some promises that become powerful enough to shape the world around them. Call it coincidence. I call it sacred. That horse is keeping faith with the only person who ever truly mattered to him. And heaven help anyone who tries to stop him. Riley rode back to the ranch as the sun set, his mind full of the somber, beautiful story. When he arrived, the Phantom was already standing in the meadow near Timothy Oakes' grave, silhouetted against the orange fading light. The ghost stallion, keeping vigil over bones that were 23 years buried. Everything changed after Jack Riley learned the truth. Before, the silver stallion had been a mystery, a condition of ownership, a potential source of bad luck. Now, the Phantom was something else entirely, a living monument to fierce devotion, a creature operating on a plane of loyalty that most men could only aspire to. Riley stopped trying to approach the horse or even contemplate the possibility of catching him. Instead, he began a different ritual. Every few days, He would ride out to the meadow where Timothy Oakes was buried. He would clean around the simple Pau Tex Teat So 1887 olive marker, pull the persistent prairie weeds, and make sure the spot was maintained, and he would talk. "I never knew Timothy," he would say softly, knowing the phantom was always within earshot, often visible on the ridge above. "But Dutch Keller said he was a good man, built this place with his own hands. It must have taken something special to inspire loyalty like yours." Slowly, over weeks, the phantom began staying closer. When Riley visited the grave, the horse showed himself more openly, not approaching, but definitely acknowledging Riley, as if taking the measure of this new human, deciding if he could be trusted with Timothy's legacy. One evening in late summer, Riley was sitting near the marker as the sun dipped below the ridges, when the phantom walked into the meadow. Not cautiously, not ready to bolt, but simply walked in and began grazing about 20 feet away. Riley's breath hitched. This was the closest the stallion had ever voluntarily come to a human since 1887. "Hey, Phantom," Riley whispered. "I understand now why you can't leave. You're waiting for him to come back, and he would if he could. I believe that anyone who had a friend like you would move heaven and earth to return." The horse raised his magnificent silver head, looking directly at Riley. In the fading golden light, the phantom seemed to glow with an ethereal quality. Riley made a quiet decision. He stood slowly, removed his dusty hat, and spoke with every ounce of sincerity he possessed. "Timothy Oakes," Riley vowed, addressing the earth and the horse, "if you're listening somehow, I swear to you, I will honor what you built. I'll keep this ranch running, I'll maintain your grave, and I'll make sure the phantom is never driven away, never harmed, never disturbed. This is his home as much as mine. You have my word." The wind rushed through the long grass like a whisper. The phantom took 3 steps closer, then 3 more. He stopped just outside arm's reach and lowered his head, breathing softly. Riley stood perfectly still. The stallion's dark eyes met his, and Riley felt as though he was being judged, measured against the memory of the man who died 23 years ago. Then, the phantom did something that no human since Timothy had ever witnessed. He stepped forward and pressed his muzzle against Riley's chest, a brief, gentle, acknowledging touch. Then he stepped back, tossed his head, and galloped away into the gathering darkness. It was enough. Riley sank to his knees, overwhelmed. The ghost stallion had accepted him, not as an owner, but as someone worthy of sharing this sacred space. As autumn plunged into a brutal winter, a rhythm of mutual respect developed between man and horse. The phantom still roamed freely, but his vigil now included the main ranch buildings, as if his protective circle had expanded to encompass Riley. Some mornings, Riley would find the stallion standing outside the barn door, watching the work. Riley began leaving grain near Timothy's grave. Not a trap, just an offering. And sometimes he would return to find the dish empty. The storm that hit in January was a killer, as ferocious as the one in 1887. Snow piled high, and the cold was relentless. One morning, Riley woke to discover 6 of his best cattle had broken through a compromised fence and were trapped in a canyon where the snow had drifted deep. They were freezing and panicking. Riley rode out, but the conditions were blinding. His bay gelding refused to push into the chest-deep drifts. Riley dismounted and tried to wade in on foot, but he sank immediately. Helpless, he stood there, freezing and desperate, certain he would lose the cattle, and perhaps himself if he stayed out after dark. That's when the phantom appeared. The stallion materialized from the white curtain of the storm like a creature of pure myth, moving through the deep snow with a power that Riley's horse couldn't match. He stopped at the drift's edge, looking first at Riley, then at the struggling cattle. "Phantom," Riley gasped, his lips numb. "I can't reach them." The stallion snorted, pawed the snow, and then plunged into the drift. His powerful legs churned through snow that would have stopped any other horse. He circled the trapped animals, herding them, pushing them back toward the shallower edge. Riley understood instantly. The Phantom was doing what he had been trained to do decades ago, working cattle. Together, man and wild horse, they got the herd moving. The Phantom drove from behind. Riley guided from the front. Slowly, agonizingly, they pushed the herd back through the drifts to safety. It took 2 hours. When the last cow was back on solid ground, the Phantom stood beside Riley, sides heaving, frosted white. Then he turned and began walking back toward the ranch. Riley followed, trusting the horse's instinct over his own lost sense of direction in the blinding whiteout. The Phantom led them straight back to the barn, unwavering. That night, warming himself by the fire, Riley realized the profound truth. The ghost stallion hadn't helped out of command, but out of acceptance. He had helped Timothy Oakes, and now, having accepted Riley as a worthy steward of this land, he had helped him too. Spring came late. In April, a hard rain washed out part of the creek bank near Timothy's grave. Riley rode out to inspect the damage and found something that made his heart stop. The erosion had exposed something metallic in the bank about 20 feet from the grave marker. Riley dug carefully. It was an old, rusted metal box. He took it back and broke the lock. Inside, wrapped in rotted oilcloth, was a small pouch of gold nuggets and a leather journal. The journal was Timothy Oakes's diary. Riley read it all night. Timothy's hopes, his struggles, his deep love for the land, and on nearly every page, mentions of his horse. Smokey helped me clear the north field today. That horse understands what I need before I even ask. Near the end, the entry that tightened Riley's throat hurt bad. Don't think I'll make it. Smokey brought me home. He tried so hard. I want him to know it wasn't his fault. I want him to be free, to run wild, to live. But I know Smokey. He won't leave. He'll stay waiting for me. Some bonds don't break, even when they should. If anyone finds this, take care of my horse. He's the best friend a man could ask for. That night, Riley did something he'd been planning. He wrote his own letter and sealed it, along with Timothy's journal and the gold, into a new metal box. His letter was a message to the future. To whoever owns this ranch after me, there is a gray stallion who lives here. His name is the Phantom, and he has been waiting 23 years for a man named Timothy Oakes. He is not cursed. He is loyal. Let him keep his vigil. Honor that. Jack Riley, 1910. He rode out to the grave, the Phantom already grazing there. Riley sat down and read Timothy's last entry aloud, every word. When he finished, the Phantom walked over. Not hesitant this time. He stopped directly in front of Riley and lowered his head until his forehead rested against Riley's chest. "He's not coming back, boy," Riley whispered, one hand on the horse's neck. "But I think he'd want you to know you did everything right. You saved him. You brought him home. You've kept his place safe. You've done enough. Now, maybe you can rest." Jack Riley ranched that land for 28 years. He never tried to catch the Phantom, never put a rope on him, never closed him in. The stallion roamed free, but the relationship between them deepened into a partnership built on profound mutual respect. The Phantom continued to help during crises, guiding cattle and alerting Riley to danger, but he never surrendered his wildness. He never forgot Timothy. People came from 3 counties to see the legendary ghost stallion, the horse who waited 31 years. But in the spring of 1918, 31 years after Timothy Oakes died, the Phantom finally grew old. Riley found him lying in the meadow near Timothy's grave one April morning. The stallion was weak, his silver coat almost white. Riley sat beside him all day, his hand on the horse's frail neck. "It's okay, boy," Riley whispered, tears blurring his vision. "You can go. You've waited long enough. If Timothy's anywhere, I think he's been waiting just as long for you. Go find him." As the sun set, The phantom took one last deep breath and was gone. Riley buried him 10 feet from Timothy's marker. He carved a simple stone, our text phantom, 1884 to 1918, the truest heart that ever beat, now reunited with Timothy Oakes, his friend. Before he died in 1938, Jack Riley updated his will with the same requirement Horatio Weatherby had put in. The meadow where Timothy and the phantom were buried was to be protected. Never built on, never plowed, kept wild and free. The story spread, becoming legend. Jack Riley had won a ranch in a poker match, but what he truly won was the privilege of witnessing something most people only read about in stories, a loyalty so pure it transcended death, a promise so deep it carved itself into the bones of the earth.